Hi, welcome to Eco Insights with Eco Engineers. My name is Kathy Macbeth, and I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at Eco Engineers. And I'm joined today by Sashi, Jim, Lindsay, Natasha, Roxby, Brad, and Karen. This is Eco Insights episode 1, part 2. We aired Eco Insights episode 1 last week. And after we wrapped, the conversation continued, and the comments that were made still held lots of value and were very inspiring. So we decided to go, when we went into post-production, that we would make a part 2 out of episode 1, and that's what we're going to air today. So we hope you enjoy.
I think COVID is making us think about some of these co-products as primary products, whether that's the distiller's grains or the CO2 or the corn oil. If we're driving less, but still the economy demands these other products. So that was kind of an interesting twist this week.
Where are they getting CO2 from? If they're not producing it from ethanol plants, will it fall on the fossil CO2 reservoirs to displace that?
Right. Yeah. Right now, those supply chains have been built around ethanol, but right, it would have to revise. And I think it's important to the economy. I think even government and industry is recognizing how important it is to leave that CO2 supply in place from that 25% of ethanol plants. Yeah.
Jim, what sort of prices are the ethanol plants getting for the CO2?
They get very, very little, so the CO2 players, there's very few CO2 players. And so they kind of are pay a nickel for the CO2 and turn around and sell it for $1. So I think the ethanol needs to get a little bit more value out of that CO2 based on what the economy values it at.
Mm-hmm.
What about the feedstock values? Like, I know, Roxby, you touched on UCO being in short supply, or maybe that's the reverse problem. Jim, what do you think, like, what's going to happen with corn prices? If we get through this shorter term, do you see big impacts on prices? Or if this is a longer term issue, I mean, obviously there's going to be something, but maybe how do you each of you see the feedstock pricing?
Yeah, corn prices are going down, and I think that the production is on a rate where there should be corn surplus going into the fall harvest. So it's kind of like a bunch of train cars running into each other. I don't know that it's not going to be good on grain prices. It's not going to be good on farming. Yeah,
I was just curious if anyone had heard if there'd been any holdups on like new state programs coming on. Like, I know probably before this we were talking a lot about like Puget Sound, Washington, Colorado, New York State, and even the Midwest regional program. But I was wondering if anyone had heard anything about that recently.
Yeah, there was an update in the RNG Coalition newsletter that they send out about New York. And New York Governor Cuomo didn't fully fund the low carbon fuel standard program, but he did set aside greenhouse gas reduction dollars and also a special carve out for RNG. So there are some things moving forward. And then otherwise, I heard Oregon CFP program, the governor has increased the GHG reduction, and they're hoping to gain that additional reduction through the CFP program there.
I think Washington has stalled. And I would imagine that state legislatures and budgets would have a hard time justifying the costs of a low carbon fuel standards type of program in the light of this COVID-19. And most of them are facing pretty severe budget shortfalls in this year and next year. That's not going to go away that fast. So it would be a challenging time to introduce some of those legislations. However, I think, like, it depends on how creative you can get with that whole policy. Kind of like what Jim pointed out, if the ethanol plant can get a little bit more for that renewable CO2, then that could really help them to tide through some of these tough times. And it's a matter of like seeing how overall the biofuels industry is contributing to the economy through by creating jobs, by creating co-products that are more sustainable than alternatives. And if that story is presented well, then the state legislatures should try to incorporate them. But right now, yeah, it would be a tough sell in the light of the budget shortfalls that they have.
I think.
Don't you think too, though, you know, with the lack of people driving and factories potentially doing less, you know, that the people seeing the environment doing better and even wildlife coming back into cities, that might influence the government agencies to put more effort toward doing some sort of LCFS in their own area?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that you're right on, Lindsay, that there's going to be, that the push for low carbon is still going to be there. I would still be bullish on low carbon.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about the things that our industry are doing for the greater good, it's pretty incredible. Like I've heard that like electric car vehicle producers are moving over to produce ventilators for hospitals that need it. Ethanol producers producing hand sanitizer. So I think the ability to adapt right now is really incredible, and seeing people, you know, realize that, yeah, I'm not going to get the RINs or the LCFS credits for doing this hand sanitizer, but people need this because it's absolutely necessary right now, has been really, really awesome to see too.
Oh, that's a great insight, Natasha. Thanks for sharing that.
I want to just mention, like, you know, we do our work in the RFS and the LCFS, and here we've seen this huge economic shift in the demand for transportation fuels, and we've seen this in a 30-day time frame, right? And I think the good news and something that we should recognize is that the RFS and the LCFS have worked, and we've seen upward pricing on RINs. And we saw the LCFS credit prices drop initially, but then go right back up near the maximum. And so even though the volume demand has changed, the RFS and LCFS have worked to continue to make the blend economics work on some levels.
Yeah, hey, that's, yeah, and didn't LCFS just celebrate a 10-year birthday or anniversary this week?
Yeah, it did. And they celebrated it by putting a hard cap on LCFS prices.
There's got to be enough to go around for everyone, I guess.
So the hard cap is just the upward revision based on the inflationary pressures, right? Yeah. And it's about $280 or so now.
Yeah, it's $200 in 2016 dollars. But I think they firmed up how the cap is going to be implemented. That's why it's now a hard cap.
Right.
Okay.
Natasha, I was going to ask you about the extension that California granted on. Can you talk about that?
Oh, for pathways, yeah. So for Tier 1 pathways that were submitted within Q1, they have an extended timeline for certification. I believe is it 45 days, where they have a little bit more time to get the site visit done. And like Kathy mentioned earlier, now virtual site visits are being completed, and to get their pathway certified, because this was not the best timing to implement a whole new process for validating pathways. So not only was California going through a transition where they went from you know, the state employees and reviewing every single pathway application and doing the due diligence on that, but now you have third-party verification bodies reviewing every pathway, getting all of them set up to do that and have success in that process. And then you have COVID-19, which does not allow you to complete the mandatory site visits. It was just, you know, one thing after the other. So I think California realized that, and they did push the deadline for pathway certification in Q1, which was very fortunate for a lot of those producers.
Hey, and we submitted our first pathway validation report, right? That was good.
Yeah, that was a big celebration. Woohoo! Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Does anyone have a last sound bite they want to toss out there?
One thing I would like to gonna add, Kathy, is that despite the COVID situation and despite any uncertainties with the RFS or credit pricing, we're continuing to see strong demand from corporate voluntary programs, and they're not budging one bit from their commitment to reducing their emissions and reaching their internal sustainability goals. And they're continuing to look for options to purchase renewable fuels, renewable electricity, renewable thermal, and find more and more creative ways to overall lower their carbon impact that they're having through their operations. So that's definitely a very positive sign. We're not seeing any of them use COVID-19 or anything else as an excuse to scale back their commitments.
Oh, that's another great insight and a really positive note. Maybe that's a good time to wrap this up unless someone's got another insight that they'd like to share.
I just want to say how proud I am of all of our customers and all the renewable energy producers out there, and that in this time, even working from home, even with the economy this disrupted, we see them really working hard and doing everything they can to continue to bring the clean energy economy on. And I'm proud of Eco Engineers too. Everybody's buckling down, and it's a very important time for industry to continue to contribute to this economy. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for that, Jim. Another positive insight. Thanks for joining us for Eco Insights, episode 1, part 2. We hope you found our conversation just as enjoyable as the first one. We'll be teeing up Eco Insights episode 2 next week. So stay tuned and watch for our next conversation. If you've got ideas on topics that you'd like us to address, or if you'd like to participate in one of our conversations in a live recording, just let us know. Reach out to any one of us. Thanks so much. Take care. Be safe out there.